This page was created to teach Black history. Unfortunately, the American educational system was designed to exclude our real historical account, so we are here to dismantle it. It's time to enlighten those of us who have been kept in the dark. I am a Black man who didn't know enough about my own history, so I began to dig deeper and do my own research. Black history is American history, so I want people of all races and cultures to join together to learn our history as one. Here, I will share all of my findings. Please like, follow, share, and subscribe to Teaching Black History. The story of George Stinney, Jr. In 1944, George Stinney lived in Alculu, South Carolina with his father, George Sr., and mother, Amy, and 4 siblings. Stinney's father worked at the town sawmill, and the family resided in company housing. Alculu was a small working-class mill town where white and black neighbors were separated by railroad tracks. The town was typical of small southern towns of the time, given segregated schools and churches for white and black residents. There was limited interaction between them. On March 23, 1944, the bodies of Betty June Binneker and Mary Emma Thames were found in a ditch on the African American side of Alculu on March 23, 1944, after the girls failed to return home the night before. Stinney's father helped in the search. The girls had been beaten with a weapon, variously reported as a piece of blunt metal or railroad spike. Binneker and Thames both suffered severe blunt force trauma, resulting in penetration of both girls' skulls. According to a report by the medical examiner, these wounds had been inflicted by a blunt instrument with a round head about the size of a hammer. The medical examiner reported no evidence of sexual assault to the younger girl, though the genitalia of the older girl were slightly bruised. The girls were last seen riding their bicycles looking for flowers. As they passed the Stinney's property, they had asked Stinney and his sister Amy if they knew where to find maypops, a local name for passion flowers. According to Amy, she was with Stinney at the time the police later established the murders occurred. According to an article reported by the Wire Services on March 24, 1944, the sheriff announced the arrest and stated that the boy had confessed and led officers to a hidden piece of iron. George and his older brother, John, were arrested on suspicion of murdering the girls. John was released by police, but George was held in custody. He was not allowed to see his parents until after his trial and conviction. According to a handwritten statement, his arresting officer was H.S. Newman, a deputy who stated, "I arrested a boy by the name of George Stinney. He then made a confession and told me where to find a piece of iron about 15 inches, where he said he put it in a ditch about 6 feet from the bicycle." In 1995, Stinney's 7th grade teacher, W.L. Hamilton, a black man, spoke in an interview with the Sumter item about George. Hamilton stated, "I remember the day he killed those boys. He got in a fight with a girl at school who was his neighbor. In those days, you didn't have to worry about children carrying guns and knives to school. But George carried a knife, and he scratched this girl with his knife. I took him outside, and we went for a little walk, and I walked and talked to him. He went back into the school in a submissive way. He begged for the child's pardon. Stinney's sister, Amy, denied those allegations and contacted Hamilton after it was published. Amy stated, "I asked him why he would say something like that," she said. "He told me someone paid him to say it. I don't know who paid him, but his exact words were, because they paid me." Hamilton died shortly after his interview was published. Following Stinney's arrest, his father was fired from his job at the local sawmill, and the Stinney family had to immediately vacate their company housing. The family feared for their safety. Stinney's parents did not see him again until the trial. He had no support during his 81-day confinement and trial. He was detained at a jail in Columbia, 50 miles from his home, due to the risk of lynching. Stinney was questioned alone, without his parents or an attorney. Although the Sixth Amendment guarantees legal counsel, this was not routinely observed until the United States Supreme Court's 1963 ruling in Gideon versus Wainwright. That explicitly required representation through the course of criminal proceedings. The entire proceeding against Stinney, including jury selection, took place on April 24, 1944. Stinney's court-appointed counsel was Charles Plowden, a tax commissioner, campaigning for election to local office. Plowden did not challenge the 3 police officers who testified that Stinney confessed to the 2 murders. He also did not challenge the prosecution's presentation of 2 different versions of Stinney's verbal confession. In one version, Stinney was attacked by the girls after he tried to help one girl who had fallen in the ditch, and he killed them in self-defense. In the other version, he had followed the girls, first attacking Mary and then Betty. There is no written record of Stinney's confession apart from Deputy Newman's statements. Other than the testimony of the 3 police officers at the trial, prosecutors called 3 witnesses: Reverend Francis Baston, who discovered the bodies of the 2 girls, and the 2 doctors who performed the post-examination. The court allowed discussion of the possibility of rape due to bruising on Benneker's genitalia. Stinney's counsel did not call any witnesses, did not cross-examine witnesses, and offered little or no defense. The trial presentation lasted 2.5 hours. More than 1,000 white Americans crowded the courtroom, but no black Americans were allowed. As was typical at the time, Stinney was tried before an all-white jury. After deliberating for fewer than 10 minutes, the jury found Stinney guilty of murder. Judge Philip H. Stoll sentenced Stinney to death by electrocution. There is no transcript of the trial, and no appeal was filed by Stinney's counsel. Stinney's family, churches, and the NAACP appealed the governor's clemency, given the age of the boy. Others urged the governor to let the execution proceed, which he did. Between the time of Stinney's arrest and his execution, his parents were allowed to see him once after the trial, when he was held in the Columbia Penitentiary. Under the threat of lynching, they were not allowed to see him any other time. Stinney was executed on June 16, 1944, at 7:30 a.m. He was prepared for execution by electric chair, using a Bible as a booster seat because Stinney was too small for the chair. He was then restrained by his arms, legs, and body to the chair. And an officer asked George if he had any last words to say before the execution took place, but he only shook his head. The executioner pulled a strap from the chair and placed it over George's mouth, causing him to break into tears. And he then placed the face mask over his face, which did not fit him as he continued sobbing. When the lethal electricity was applied, the mask covering slipped off, revealing tears streaming down Stinney's face. He was buried in an unmarked grave in Crowley.